Now, this is a big deal, what's been happening every single day with the U.S. propaganda machine on this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. We talk about it a lot here because if we don't talk about it, the propaganda is insane. I had one of my friends text me, "Is it really true you're going to work for like Russian propaganda?" Like, and I'm like, well, they're going to allow me to say what I want. And, I get to really see what's going on over there. And yeah, like it's true. And it's not propaganda. Oh, but it's Russia's state affiliated media. I'm like, well, the United States has this and that. And it's technically not. But, this whole thing where even people that, that know me and that are progressive and have these ideas, that are sort of like on the left in the Bernie movement and stuff are like thinking, wow, that's crazy. Like, this is propaganda. Are you going to be okay? Or are they going to allow you to speak? Yeah. And that just shows you how prevalent the lies manipulated by mainstream media are and how so many people just fall for it. And, I'm not mean. I'm like, if you're my friend, I have a little bit more patience with you, I guess. But yeah, so anyway.
My good friend was like, is she going to be okay? Are they going to kill her for opening her mouth? I'm like, where the freak did you guys get this information from? But we know where it's from. Johnny used to call it Empire Education. We talked about it this morning when we had a great show, not a cringe show, with the Bank sisters.
It wasn't a bad show. I'm just saying you were cringe at times. Okay. Anyway. So fams.
That was me draining threes over you.
So fams. Yes. May I start? Or
yes, please. I'm sorry.
All right. So Azov has fallen, fams, and don't let them tell you that Zelensky rescued these Ukrainians and that they amicably surrendered and that this is how it happened. Azov has fallen. And this is a very key win right here in general for the whole war, because Russia has effectively won in terms of the military. And we keep saying this, but I mean, with this, it's extremely, there is just no other way that Ukraine can come up, as much as the United States and NATO would have you believe otherwise. So this is from the Ministry of Defense of Russia, okay? And they said, as a result of negotiations with representatives of Ukrainian servicemen blocked at the Azovstal Iron and Steel Works in Mariupol, an agreement was reached to evacuate the wounded. At present, the ceasefire regime was established in the area of enterprise, and a humanitarian corridor was opened through which wounded Ukrainian servicemen were transported to a medical facility in Novozovsk, Donetsk People's Republic, to provide them with all the necessary assistance. And so the Convo Couch, of course, posted this video where we got it also from the Ministry of Defense. And in the last 24 hours, and I have an update from this, but in the last 24 hours at that time, so which was like yesterday night, remember Russia is about 7 hours ahead from the East Coast, 265 Azov nationalists, unit fighters, and Ukrainian servicemen blocked at the Azovstal plant, the ones that have been stuck there, laid down their arms and surrendered. And that included 51 wounded. And then everybody that was in need of medical assistance was sent to the hospital in Novozovsk, the Donetsk People's Republic. So let's go ahead and watch this video, and so you guys can get a look as to what that kind of looks like. For the next one, you can. Fam, how many times does CNN show videos like this, MSNBC, where it's literally on the ground? Like, I mean, we don't even see this from our own military when they do things. It's selective and very framed, you know, in a certain way. And of course, we have Hollywood, and we know that every single movie is propaganda. Yesterday, my brother and my father and mother were watching Top Gun, and I've never seen Top Gun. I know it has a great soundtrack, but you know,
New one or the old one, fam?
No, the old one, because they watched it because they want to see the new one. And it was, and for me, I just was hearing some of the dialogue, right? And I'm like, holy crap, this is so accurate to what the United States like military is. So
you know, the interesting thing about that movie, I know Trey would probably agree. If you go back and watch it, other than the fight scenes with the planes, either the simulation or the ones with the Russian MiGs, they're all just little 1 minute vignettes, like 2 minute vignettes at the most. It was like they were controlling Tom Cruise. He was young in his career. Same with Val Kilmer, who played, what was his name? What was his name in the movie? Thank you. Iceman. Jesus Christ. Hollywood. Iceman and Wolfman, right? That was, they're two guys and stuff like that. And it also had Anthony Edwards, who was Revenge of the Nerds in it. And Meg Ryan, who was Goose's wife and stuff. So it had a good cast. Tom Skerritt, Michael Ironside, all these great people. But it's like little 2 minute vignettes so they can control fam. It was like, okay, it's a young Tom Cruise. Let's just go little by little. So it's an interesting movie when you go back and watch it. Just a little nerdy movie thing to point out, by the way.
Clearly, fam. And I know you're the go-to movie guide to remember all these quotes. So the next thing I want to show is a little bit more of this footage right here. I do want to show the update, right? Because now, and you can just go ahead and play the video, Oz. In Mariupol, now the number that of people that have continued to surrender went up as of this morning to 694 militants, including 29 wounded, a total of 959 since the 16th of May, including 80 wounded, of 51 who needed treatment. And like we said, they're treated, as you've seen me and the Convo Couch post on Twitter, with the according to the protocol of international law, you know, following the humanitarian treatment of prisoners. When you see the vast majority of Ukrainian either captured or surrendered militants, they constantly talk about how they're better treated by the Russians than they thought. Now there is this push to not release the Azov members, because not everybody is an Azov member. There's a lot of Ukrainians that were forced to fight for Ukraine. And so the Russians are making a difference between the Azov battalion members and the ones that were forced to fight. They're all going to go on trial, but the Azov members, the people of Russia do not, and the government of Russia obviously don't want to release them, because the whole thing is to prevent this from happening again. So that's that. And
I just want to talk about really quickly the way that some of these people, these blue checks online, that are still trying to kind of spin this in the right way, that Putin's losing this war, that there's a bullet with Putin's name on it, that he's hiding out, that, you know, the Ukrainians, if you look at this paper, and I know, you know, I'm a newspaper guy, so I'm not going to go into it today, even though, you know, I'd like you to see me with your new eyes with the hat on, and I'll make sure I'll be able to do that. But they keep on writing in the newspaper, the propaganda, that Ukraine is pushing back the Russians. Ukraine is pushing back the Russians. When we know the Russians are establishing a territory, they push forward a little bit and they pull back into the territory, which is the Donbass region and now Odessa and everything on top of the Black Sea. So they're still trying to lie and whatnot. And the way you can tell they're trying to lie is like, oh, Russia's in this crazy invasion. Yet every single person we know, from Congress, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, Bono, all go into Kiev like it's the safest place in the world. They wouldn't go there if it was under threat. That's all you do is get fed lies by the mainstream media in the West. It's not even news now. It's just pure propaganda.
Yeah, it stopped being news a long time ago. And that's why we're going to go over how the dangerous territory that we're going into. And speaking of the Azov battalion, right, and the constant denial of this, you know, Alex Rubenstein and Wyatt Reed have been really good at like pointing out the hypocrisy on Twitter of the you know, the US media and versus like how they talk about the Azov battalion and versus how they talk about the white supremacists here and the shooter, right, as a white supremacist. We went over that the other day. But in particular, Biden addressed the nation in this clip, talking about how the United States will not tolerate white supremacy. This is Joe Biden, the author of the 1994 crime bill, the author of the Patriot Act, the one that talked about a racial jungle, the one that has worked with segregationists. I mean, this is Joe Biden we're talking about. Apart from his history, now the United States is continuing to send billions of dollars to Ukraine, which ends up in mostly the hands of those in control, which are the Azov battalion. So let's hear what Biden had to say about white supremacy.
Individual lives of love, service, and community that speaks to the bigger story of who we are as Americans. A great nation, because we're good people. Jill and I bring you this message from deep in our nation's soul. In America, evil will not win, I promise you. Hate will not prevail, and white supremacy will not have the last word.
Fam, isn't it so rich? Because the only two things you really forgot was the fact is that he gave a eulogy for a Klans member. We can't forget about that, the Robert Byrd situation. And he did say he didn't want his kids growing up in a racial jungle, right? And he asked for a wall way before Donald Trump. So
yes,
It's just rich and nice and beautiful that this person's telling us that we don't have to deal with white supremacy. Please.
Yeah, and as you always point out, nothing is more racist and white supremacist than going around and bombing people in other countries, primarily countries in the global south, countries in the Middle East as we know it, or West Asia. And that to me is extremely racist, starting the Libyan slave trade under the Obama administration, under Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and what they've done to countries like Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, what they allow Israel to continue to do to Palestinians, the allowing journalists to be killed like nothing. And so that is, you know, and let's not forget Yemen. So when we talk about white supremacy, if you want to, if you're only, and I say this again, and I'm going to say it until people get it, if you're only talking about it in terms of a domestic issue, you're not really talking about the whole thing, because it is a foreign policy issue, because our military trains our police. So if you want to talk about that, I mean, you're talking about the whole empire as a whole. It needs to feed itself. It's a machine, and it needs to be fed by more war. And that's what it is. And you can't take out and compartmentalize the issue of white supremacy as only an issue related to police brutality, as only an issue related to race, but an issue that is also weaponized by the empire to extract natural resources from other countries and to, of course, manipulate any sovereign nation, right? Yeah. So I think Joe Biden's statement is obviously one of the most hypocritical things you can say. Yeah. It's a joke. It's absolutely just, I mean, you either laugh or you just like, you know, you're just insanely angry at what he's saying.
Yep. And you're absolutely right, fam. It's hypocritical at best, because you're not walking the walk to talk the talk. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Joe Biden is weaponizing it and using it, right? He's using it to disarm, you know, because they came in right off the bat too as well with the white supremacy. Let's disarm these people. You know, they want to divide. You know what I'm saying? They want to make sure that the conversation is, if you're not with us for here, if you're not for gun control, you're racist in a way, because it's killing, you know, black and brown people. White people are doing this and stuff. I heard a professor or something from USC saying that like 80% of the murder that was committed in the United States was by like white supremacist mentality. Or I don't know what he was trying to say. I was like, wait a second. And I don't want to question this stuff, you know, and it's also meant to distract, right? Yeah. If we have these conversations, he's He's amping up all this stuff. We're not paying attention to what's going on in the Ukraine and the money they're giving them. We're not paying attention to the Pfizer data dumps. We're not paying attention to all the economic woes of the both Democratic and Republican parties. You know what I'm saying? This is major distraction. And at the end, to solidify all these Ds, they use the demonetize. They start cutting everybody, silencing everybody, taking people down, and it's at the highest level it's ever been. Remember the other day you put up that Ukrainian maps was taken down? I mean, it's who's next? Who's next? Who's going to be demonetized? Who's going to be, you know what I'm saying, the platform? Mm-hmm. Caleb Mop and everybody. I mean, it's going to be, it's ridiculous. And all this is meant to happen in a way they wanted this to happen. You know what I'm saying? This is all pre-planned and they're just playing it out.
And before I go on to the next, this next article that is extremely scary that I do want to talk about, we're going to have somebody on Somalia to talk about Somalia, because I haven't forgotten about Somalia. You know, several of our audience members were talking about it and reached out. And I think it's important, especially, of course, with the invasion. And it is an invasion by the United States, and the hypocrisy, of course, of people not having Somalian flags around their borders and their profile pictures, and, you know, that whole thing, and how it's not a U.S. How, you know, their whole little shtick is like, oh, well, Somalians asked for the help of the United. No, that's not how it works here. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to have a guest on that's an expert on that on Friday, and I just confirmed with them. So look out for that, because we will be talking about it, in case you're wondering why we haven't. So the New York Times actually posted this article about this bill that is being drafted in the Senate that would actually allow the U.S. courts to try war crime cases, even if neither of the perpetrators nor the victims are American. And this is, of course, in response to Russia's targeting of civilians in Ukraine. And as you guys can see, that's the article says Russian atrocities prompt bipartisan push to expand U.S. war crime law. And I'm just going to read a couple of things from here. So this is a bipartisan bill, senators from both parties, and this would expand the 1996 law, that war crimes law, to give American courts jurisdiction over cases involving atrocities committed abroad, even if neither party is a U.S. citizen. And the idea behind this was obtained by the New York Times, and it's that if someone who committed war crimes abroad later comes to the U.S. and is discovered, that person could be prosecuted by those actions by the Department of Justice. Killing of civilians and the discovery of mass graves in parts of Ukraine that had been occupied by Russian troops have incited this international outcry. And this is what Mr. Grassley, the bill's author, said. He said the United States must not be a safe haven for war criminals looking to escape justice in their home country. This bill sends a strong message that people who commit war crimes are not welcome here and should be punished, regardless of where their offense was committed or who they victimized. Perpetrators committing unspeakable war crimes, such as those unfolding before our very eyes in Ukraine, must be held to account. We have the power and responsibility to ensure that the United States will not be used as a safe haven by the perpetrators of these heinous crimes. So, fam, just so you know, but before I get your take on this, Patrick J. Leahy, the Democrat from Vermont, who is considered by many a somewhat progressive Democrat, and Lindsey Graham shook hands for this bill, okay? And they co-sponsored this bill together. And they're lobbying their caucuses for support to pass it by unanimous consent and skip, once again, the committee of reviewing process of this whole thing. And this would, of course, this bill would also eliminate the restriction that Congress had that under the 1996 law that covered only instances in which Americans were the perpetrator of or the victim of the war crime. So it would eliminate any restrictions, making it so easy for them to do this. And it would cover any situation in which the offender is present in the United States, regardless of the nationality of the victim or offender. And it would also eliminate any statute of limitations on war crimes. So prosecutions could be brought many years later.
Yeah.
Bam.
Yeah. Well, the thing that sticks out to me more than anything, you're saying it's going to be a quick, what do you call a floor vote or whatever vote? The same thing they did with the CARES Act, right? Where they don't want to have time to discuss this. This is something.
No committees. Yeah.
This is something that Chuck the Schmuck and Mitch McConnell going hunting rabbits. This is something that they agreed to just right now for this $40 billion. And Rand Paul stood up and said, no. We want to have a quorum. We want to get on the floor. Same thing that Thomas Massie did when he jumped in the car from Kentucky. By the way, congratulations to Thomas Massie. He won his election yesterday. So, he's been endorsed by Trump this time. Trump will just go where the wind blows. Trump is now starting to move towards the libertarians now, right? You know what I'm saying? Which I don't think he should move necessarily to the fiscal libertarians, but if he's going to move more towards the anti-interventionist libertarians, so be it. But this is to shield themselves, fam. This is what these politicians do. The other day when Ryan Christian was on the show, he was mentioning something. Well, these politicians, we can argue that they're not elected, they're selected, and they don't work for us anyways. They work for their donors. So what difference does it make if they push these things through or they kind of like go into committee? Like what they did in New York, and instead of pushing a bill through, they just pushed it right into the regulations. This is what we're seeing in the World Health Organization. They're just going to put stuff right into the regulations. Well, by using this process, they don't have to expose themselves. They shield themselves. We should always, even if the system is broken right now, if it's any form of something that has to be on the open where they have to debate about it and talk about it and whatnot, we should always push for that, because at least they'll be creating evidence, exposing themselves. Eventually, hopefully, we hope that a lot of Americans can wake up and see, and they're going to see what these politicians are doing. If they have to sit there and fight for a reason or give an explanation for why they're voting for this bill, as opposed to just whooshing it through really quickly without anything on the record, so be it. You know what I'm saying? So it's a form of transparency. And even though that system is broken as itself, we still need to push for that rather than this whole, we're just going to skip. We're going to go right from committee to a voice vote. It's called a voice vote. Nobody has to come up here and argue why they want this. Nobody has to, argue against it. We'll just push it through right away. So this is something that's very scary. And it's something they've been doing quite a bit. The fact they did this stuff for the CARES Act and the Americans didn't go nuts. And Donald Trump, he was calling Massie what do you call him, an instigator, whatever he was calling. He was mad at Massie back then, and Massie was the only one going, no, let's get a quorum here. Let's get people on the record. Let's let them see our vote. This is some scary shit, and they continue to use this tactic time and time again. You have no friends in Washington.
Right. So it's not just that the United States is trying to exert international jurisdiction over the free press via the extradition and imprisonment of Julian Assange, and to really show every other journalist, an independent, real journalist that is willing to put their life on the line to risk everything for the truth. They're not just trying to exert international jurisdiction over the press. They're trying to exert international jurisdiction over the way war works, international law in general. Yeah. And they're trying to bully people surrounding governments in Europe, of course, and NATO, it's his extension, to continue to do this. And of course, they're using the excuse of Russia's supposed war crimes when the documented witness testimonies show that the Azov battalion are the ones that have been committing them. But in spite of that, even if you do believe that Russians have committed war crimes, and I'm sure that happens on both ends because that is the nature of war, there should be a normal process to do this. But now the United States is trying to basically decide which way the war goes, control the entire narrative, control other countries is like, and any sort of opposition to it. And so I think this is extremely dangerous. It's just, once again, an attempt to control every single aspect. And it's something that people should be entirely opposed to, no matter where you fall on this side of this conflict, because one day you could be on the side where you're getting accused of something that you didn't do. And if they're going to accuse Julian Assange of sharing classified information, and that's literally journalism, is publishing documents that expose and are, you're the watchdog of the national security state of the government, essentially, then they could say that Vladimir Putin is committing war crimes and try to get him that way. Their whole agenda is to really get rid of Vladimir Putin, is to have Russia lose any sort of control over Eurasia and to really wage this new Cold War against both Russia and China. And it shows in what they're trying to do here.
Yeah, well, better to lose control of Eurasia than Uranus. So, you know.
Bam. This is what I mean. This is exactly what I mean.
Steve would have got away saying it's a dad joke and you would have said it's okay. But me, I say it, I get crucified. You see the double standard right here, ladies and gentlemen? You can see.